I'm Jay. Back in 2016, I started a relatively well-known publication called Hacker Noon, which has about 50 million readers, 40 plus thousand writers. It's a very fun thing. I'm currently on I gotta count, but fifth or sixth company. I have also had regular jobs in tech at Google, Fanatics, Capital One, pretty much all over the place. I am a software engineer of over 20 years. I've been doing mainly technical stuff for the majority of my career. But as it pertains to this, I've been at companies that have raised in the multiple millions of dollars. I have a company that I've worked for that will be IPOing. I've had another one that already did. That one recently sarcastically, fantastically crashed. There are news stories about it. I've been a LP at one fund, which means a limited partner. That's the people that put money into the VCs. I have guided and done due diligence for VCs, been on the advisory board of the South by Southwest Accelerator, where I've seen, God, must be over 1,000 companies and their decks and everything. So while I am in no way an absolute expert in here, this what I'm going to try to talk with you guys about today is from that expertise. So let's go ahead and start with some advice. These next two slides are probably the most important thing of the lesson. So the first thing is how to make a deck, but try not to use it. I know that sounds crazy, but if you can get their interests, have all of these numbers on the top of your head, all the rest of that sort of stuff, and not forward your deck to them, that's better. Don't end the conversation like, oh, I'll send you my deck. Like the conversation is, why don't we get on the phone and talk about it? Why don't we do all those sorts of things? If you focus on nothing else, it's that the relationship and the information that you can condense down from what the deck actually is to your most important points, make sure that you're spending your time doing that part. Treat it like a sales call and a follow-up, not going in front of a class and giving a report on something. People don't want to see reports, they want to see action. So investors pattern match. When you do have a deck, make sure that your deck shouldn't be weird. I don't know the precise way to describe weird other than you know it when you see it, but established norms are there for a reason. They're used to seeing and we'll go through a deck later, a sample deck. They're used to seeing a certain pattern. They're used to seeing X and then Y and then Z and these other things. The best example of this I can give you is WeWork, which was at one point a $46 billion company, decided to do their S1, which is their IPO filing, as this weird new avant-garde BSE kind of thing. And their IPO crashed. And they were a $46 billion company at that point. As a seed stage or other early stage company, you're not even going to get that type of slack. You're just dealing with everyone's used to seeing this. There's a lot of volume. Everyone just goes through it over and over again. So match the patterns. Unless it's something truly in need of not matching the pattern, you should, for the most part, stick to, the kind of guides you can see online, the sample templates, all the rest of that sort of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have really good images or that sort of stuff. And kind of the last time I did this talk, we didn't really have as much AI, but my other advice that I guess is new to this, don't use AI to much. They can tell you didn't put in the effort. If you show up with a deck that has a whole bunch of M dashes in it, the dash dash big line thing, or just feels like it was made by AI, they're more likely to get rid of your deck on yeah, this person isn't really going to try that hard. And that's one of the things they want to do. So don't overflow your deck with things. The purpose of your deck is to give them the information they need to get to yes. Every word in there should be in there for a reason. People that add a very big, fluffy deck, it's usually a sign that they're covering up that they're not executing. That's not true always, but it is a sign that they are going to read that you aren't executing if you have a big elongated tail typed out or anything like that. So, answer the questions that you see coming. Don't tell them you have a skydiving hobby. They don't need to know that. They are definitely marking you down for that. Well, unless it's a skydiving startup, in which case, sure. But even then. Okay. Number two most important slides here. Fundraising, unless you are absolutely knocking it out of the park in a publicly visible way, takes a lot of time. It will take months, probably. If you have a lot of runway and can instead spend that time getting your metrics up, grow the company instead. The better you're performing, the easier the fundraising will be. But don't give it too much time, the corollary to that, where you're going to run out of money. Even if you're close to running out of money, that's a really great way to get taken advantage of as a founder. Once again, too much text and images is bad. Everything should be thought out and on purpose. If you have metrics, because I've just talked to a couple of VCs about this, like idea stage or even pre-launch companies aren't getting funded as much as they used to. If you can put meaningful metrics in there, definitely do that. If you have a customer, 10 customers, 1,000 customers, and the average cost of goods sold is X, user acquisition is Y, any of that kind of stuff, put it in. The founder slide is rarely needed. Sure, they want to know about you, but the fact that you went to Stanford or something like that basically doesn't matter to the vast majority of VCs. In fact, some people actually don't invest in those kind of people because they get overvalued. And the competition slide is bullshit. Everyone knows it's bullshit. They want to know two things. One, that you know who your competition is, and B, what you are doing differently that is translating to a result than what your competition is doing, because it can just as easily go fund your competition. So, as I said, bullshit, but you need to make sure it's correct, flushed out, and answers that question. So here's a couple of ways that pitches fail. If you don't treat your pitch like a conversation where you need the time and you value theirs, it's a bad thing. You need to be short, but to the point, very informative, and there needs to be a hook, for lack of a better way of saying it, since I'm sure you've all seen it, one of those Facebook or Instagram or whatever other thing you use, story or reels that have you'll never believe what happened in them. That's a hook. A little bit of brain rot, but at the exact same time, if you don't have their attention within the first 2 or 3 slides, they're going to be catching up on emails for the rest of the meeting. If you don't understand the industry or your market, that is bad. It's disqualifying. They'll know instantly. You don't need to put this in your deck, but you need to have all that information on the top of your head. So the other part of that is if you go to a VC that clearly wasn't a fit, A, they're going to tell you that, and B, you've wasted both of your times. Just don't pitch somebody who is clearly the wrong thing. If you are a team trying to create a new AI model and you are all salespeople, your deck isn't going to work. Your company probably isn't going to work. So if your team looks weird, you will get definitely nuked for that one. You got to explain why your team's weird. My first company was in the social media realm, and my co-founder was 45 at the time, which doesn't seem old to me now, but I was 22 at that time. And VCs told me oh, you're the one with the older founder. I'm like, yeah, what does that mean? He's like, it's weird. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's weird. So take a real look at that. Really explain why that is the case. In that case, by the way, he was the head of sales in Facebook North America, and it still didn't get him over the hurdle of it being weird. Do not hide your competitors. It will do worse for you than if you mention it and say that they exist. Investors are going to due diligence you. They're going to make sure they're not sending a large check just because. And companies and technology have been around for 30, 40 years inside of internet tech companies. If you can't answer why it only became possible to do what you're doing right now, you're going to have a hard time pitching. And the reason is the base assumption from every VC is that it would have been done and tried multiple times at this point. So if your answer isn't something well, AI is now allowing this, or the XYZ feature came out on a phone or something like that, it's probably going to be hard to sell a VC on it. Here's a sample deck that kind of is the vibe everyone's looking for. Obviously, you got to have the intro page. Your logo's there, your tagline's there. The third line here is actually the most important thing. You probably think it's the least important thing, but the most important thing, probably in the whole deck, is what you're doing to help who your customer is with this huge problem by doing an X thing that solves that problem using what you do. They will either tune in or out of the conversation by the end of that sentence. Sounds weird, but if you don't nail that sentence, the rest of your deck doesn't matter. Make sure you demonstrate that you know your customer. This page deck slide, the slide is a demonstration that you have talked to people and you know who you're building for and why. It doesn't matter as much if you're correct about the problems, but they want to know that you really went into it here. Then that yields the next slide, which is what your solution actually is. Ideally, and I'm willing to bet this has changed severely over the last couple of months, if you don't have at least a working demo, I don't even know if you need a deck yet. Like there are 80 different services at this point that will build you that. And most of them are free basically at this point. If you don't have a visual demonstration of your product, I don't know why you'd try to fundraise. It would probably be questionable to them. So my recommendation, and I know some of you probably aren't the right fit for Claude Code or anything like that, but like a lovable, something like that, just have a image of your product, I think at this point is a requirement. And then you need to make sure you highlight the benefits to the user of what you're building and how you've tested that. Like this is about showing, whoever you're talking to that you put in the work and their money isn't just going to go get used for, I don't know, parties in San Tropez, which is a thing that happened with this one guy. Well, with multiple people, but there's a relatively famous story. To traction. Anything you can show at all as traction needs to be shown. You building something, not traction. You selling something, traction. You designing something, not traction. You getting a letter of intent from XYZ or like having XYZ number of signups, traction. Show your traction using people in their ecosystem. Obviously, you need to tell them how it works. Don't make this complicated. If they read that how it works complicated, they will think that users think it's complicated. See what I'm saying about brevity and everything? Keep it simple here. The business model is how they value you, not whether or not they invest in you. This is how they're going to value what the value of your company is going to end up being. Customers are willing to pay this amount for this, and the cost of selling that to them is that. Basically, this is cost of goods sold, COGS, over revenue, the percentage. And that lets them know like, hey, they're going to be able to spend this much acquiring users, all the rest of that kind of stuff. Try to get to the point where you understand what this business model tactic is going to be. It's really important because it will let you bring that up into other parts of the conversation and they will be impressed by that. This is the Gartner Magic Quadrant version of the how we are different slide. Ideally, you just want a spreadsheet style. We have this, other people don't. But if it's this kind of simple, yeah, go for it. But the vibe you are trying to present is what's in here, not the actual content. So like, yep, we're over here. We're better than everyone else. But you probably want to just do it as a sheets kind of a thing. And then that leads you into, okay, well, assuming we're better and we have these good metrics, what's the size of the market we can capture? And they're going to take that number and project out, they can capture a $40 billion in sales market with, well, I'll make it a much smaller number, $40 million in sales market. That won't get funded, and they'll get 70% of that spend as profit. So their company could easily be valued at current numbers conservatively at $1.2 billion. That's what they're gonna be like, does that fit my fund return size? And then if it's a no, that might disqualify you. Rarely, they're never gonna believe you on this slide, but it kind of gives you an idea. And they're used to seeing this. This slide is most useful in the instance where they don't know the market exists. So like if you were Sam Altman trying to, right before you launched ChatGPT, people didn't understand that there was even a market there. That's the kind of a thing. Or like landscaping. VCs don't spend a lot of time examining the size of the landscaping market. But in rich neighborhoods, you're talking 20, 40. I don't actually know. I haven't had a yard in a very, like, 2 decades. But like how much mower it costs. And like this is a big number probably. But they're not going to understand that off the top of their heads. And they'd have to really go look into it. So like that's the kind of times where the market opportunity slide starts to make a difference because they don't understand it's large enough. Otherwise, they're going to do their own research. By the way, this slide is not the same as this slide. This is what you've executed over time and on what amount of money you did. The up and to the right thing is required out of here, not in the way you show it, but numbers should go up and to the right. So once again, this is to display to them what you are capable of accomplishing and that you are accomplishing. The team slide usually goes towards the end unless somebody's really that important. I've been on decks where people invented transformers, which is the T in ChatGPT. That slide came earlier that time. So a couple of links there are the 500 startups guide, which we'll forward around to you guys, and 30 deck examples. Once again, these weren't updated for the AI age, so take it with a grain of salt. Now on to the slides you will totally be able to tell I threw together just now. Tactics for outreach. Knowing who your VC that you're pitching, as I said earlier, is the most important thing. Like, you're never gonna get a energy tech VC to invest in your social network. It's just not gonna happen. People have their fund theses and they're gonna have to stick to it. So don't waste your or their time. But there are a couple of relatively public databases for you to go and look and find out who at your stage invests in this type of thing. So know who you're pitching. If you're going to try to reach out to them, go for warm intros. Warm intros return 13 times better than cold or other intros. What a warm intro is when somebody you know vouches for you, which means once you have your list of VCs to reach out to, go check LinkedIn and other ways, or like send to your friends in tech, hey, I need introductions to these. Does anyone know them? That's 100% like the best use of your time when fundraising, other than executing on your product. Warm intros. You're going to have to take, even if you have warm intros, a lot of meetings. 40 plus is not unreasonable. I think one of the multiple unicorns had 125 meetings before they got their first check. As I said, this is a time-consuming process. Try to group it all together. But it's going to take a lot of meetings. Don't get discouraged. Their job is to say no. Your job is to get to a yes. Well, it's not really your job. Your job's building the product, but your job in this instance is getting to a yes. Cold intros don't work as well. Fewer words are better in the email, same as they are with the deck. But like, I'll give you an example. Like, I've created AI that services construction workers. Okay. Dear Mr. Altman or the Toll Brothers in the United States, the reason I'm reaching out to your VC firm is that I see that you've invested in X, Y, and Z other companies in this space that aren't competitive. I was wondering if you'd be willing to hear about, and you literally put in this line in that email. Would that, and then you follow up with, if you have time, I'd love to meet. And then that's it. Your limit, depending on the size, I'll do it in sentences, is probably 4 sentences. If you have a big blob of text, they're probably not going to read it. We'll put it through an AI summarizer. Anyway, that's the deck part of it. But overall, once again, happy to be a resource to any of you guys. And I wish everyone here the best of luck.